But I'm really glad to welcome you to the program. And it's amazing, all these different editions. We'll let them know about that. And also, I guess it's 5th anniversary now. So congratulations to you all on having, and it's expanding. And welcome very much to Conversations. Pleasure to welcome to the program Dana Cheng. And she's the Director of Communications for the New York office of a major publishing effort in the world called the New Epoch Times. And we've done a program with one of her colleagues in the past, and we've taken note of the newspaper, as has much of the world. And it's a real pleasure. We've met in the past with Dana, and welcome very much to Manhattan Network and to Conversation.
Thank you, Harold, for inviting me.
It's my great good pleasure to welcome you to the program. And we've talked in the past, and maybe it'd be worthwhile. We want to talk about the Epoch Times and about China. And but could you share a little of your personal background, where you're born and raised, that sort of thing, and then we'll segue from that into a discussion of the paper for which you're the Director of Communications for the New York office of. But could you share your own background, born and raised, education, a little of that, and then we'll get into some of the substance of China, which is a focus of your paper. But please.
Yes, I was born in Wuhan. It's a city in the center of China, about 8 million people. So my parents are architects. So from little on, my father emphasized that education is the top one priority for me.
There were 8 million people in the city of Wuhan?
Yeah.
That's a big city.
It's okay in China.
But there's so many people there. But that's very close to what New York City is, I think.
Well, it's on Yangtze River, so
on the Yangtze, yeah.
So it's a center of transportation, different people passing by there. And then I spent my university years in Shanghai. I graduated with a master's degree from Shanghai Jiao Tong University. That's, I would say, among the top 5 universities in China.
It's like the Ivy League of China.
Kind of.
Yes, I see. And what did you graduate? What field?
Actually, theoretical physics.
Theoretical physics?
Yes.
Oh, that's a basis in the sciences and mathematics. Huh?
Right. I love math.
You do love math?
Yes.
You like the calculus?
Yes. I was good at it.
You were good at it. My son liked it. He really, I didn't know what he was talking about. But a mathematical, somebody gifted in the mathematics as well positioned to study physics, because so much of the theoretical expression is mathematical, is it not? Yeah. Well, good for you. You did a bachelor's degree in physics, or?
I did a master's degree in Shanghai Jiao Tong University. Then I came to United States on full scholarship for a PhD program. So I got my PhD in U.S.
Good for you. And where did you do that?
Ohio University.
Ohio University in Columbus, Ohio.
Athens.
Athens. That's a branch of it, right? The main campus is in.
Yeah, that's the main campus. It's a beautiful town.
Yeah. Okay, that's very good. And you did that PhD in physics as well?
Right.
Huh. So you're keeping up with all the theoretical developments of physics and?
Sometimes. But now I'm very much for media.
You've gone to the media. Well, okay, very good. And am I not mistaken, you lived in Chicago for a while?
Yes.
And was that, your husband was there? Or,
yes.
And he's involved in physics, or is he involved in business, or?
Yeah, he works in the finance field.
I see, okay. Now, you've gotten involved with this Epoch Times, and you've got a physics scientific background of China, and here you've got experience in China. I don't mean to pry. You came over here on a fellowship, having done a bachelor's, or your undergraduate work, so you would have come over here relatively young, but you had a long experience in China, so you understand that country well because it's your native country.
Right.
You also understand this country pretty well because you've been here for quite a long time and studied seriously and so forth. And then you've taken interest in the Epoch Times.
Yeah.
Maybe you could share a little of your own, the history of this major newspaper. Tell us what it is and what its mission is and its the background. the Epoch Times, because I know it's getting a very wide circulation, and it's growing by, as we say, leaps and bounds. It's growing very, very quickly because you share the Epoch Times in your association with it.
Epoch Times started 5 years ago by a group of people who know China very well and grew up in China and know how much there's a need for a real independent media in Chinese.
In Chinese or in China?
In Chinese.
In Chinese
language, yeah,
right, okay,
yeah. In China, of course, that's very much needed, but you can't do much about it right now because I will get into it.
Yes, right.
Yeah. So I was very much inspired by my friend. His name is Zhang Yuhui. He was one of the first editors. He was in China. He organized a group of reporters and really want to report truthful information and truthful news in China. You know, all the media in China is under the direction of propaganda department. So it's the
under the direction of, I'm sorry?
Propaganda department.
Propaganda department.
Yes.
No, they don't have a department of propaganda.
In China, yes.
No, you call it, they don't call it the
They call it propaganda department.
They do, really?
Yes.
What's the word in Chinese for propaganda?
宣传.
How do you say? How you say?
宣传. Yes.
Okay, that's propaganda?
That's propaganda.
Literally translated propaganda, because propaganda has a negative connotation in the English language. It doesn't have the same in Chinese?
But in China, people are used to this because the leader of Communist Party openly told the public, media is the mouthpiece of Communist Party. That's open to the public.
Do you understand the meaning? It's worth going into here, if you could, because we're trying to understand cultural differences.
Right, right.
Do you understand the meaning of propaganda in the English language?
Yeah,
the negative connotation that's given to that? Because that's information that it's just used to manipulate people. It's not meant to be, and it's for some political purpose. It isn't meant to be truthful. It isn't meant to be scientific. It's meant to be a way of manipulating the population, and it has a negative connotation in terms of, if you say it's propaganda.
Yeah.
Does the word...
That's exactly what the media in China is about.
I know. Well, there are people who argue here in the United States, and this is another issue we can get to, that that's what the media is about in the United States, but they wouldn't say it's propaganda. They would say that the established media in the United States is supporting the system here, and if it was referred to as propaganda, that would be a negative thing, and they would not call it propaganda. They would say mainline media reporting the news, true and actual things like that. Wouldn't the government the government wouldn't take and say we have a department of propaganda with the negative connotation? I wouldn't think.
No, in Chinese it's called 宣传.
Yes.
So it's 宣传部.
But here they call it the Office of Public Information or something. They give it a fancy title. They don't say it's propaganda.
Well,
maybe it's just arguing over the meaning of a word, but is it that gross, or is it that blatant disregard for what we would call free press on the part of the government?
There's no concept of free press in China.
Okay.
And that's well known, and everyone in China accepted that. Individuals have fought for certain freedom of speech, but freedom of media, freedom of press, that's very far away.
Okay.
So
we're talking a huge cultural difference.
It's not a cultural difference. It's something introduced to China along with the communist. Communist ideology is not native of Chinese culture.
It's from Karl Marx in England and Germany. Yeah.
So actually, it's something related to Communist Party. It's not related to Chinese culture.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's a distinction.
Right.
But the manipulation of news is blatant. You understand the word blatant? It's outright in terms of China. They say we're manipulating the news. We're not going to give you the good news. They're not going to try and say this is the real truth and good news.
Well, let's don't argue on the words.
Okay, good.
I think the leader of a Communist Party openly told the public, media is the mouthpiece of a Communist Party. That's the explanation of propaganda department. So,
yeah.
so basically, we can see what the media is about in China.
At least they're open about it.
Well, okay.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. you understand, yeah.
Yeah. I think if you look very closely, the reason that the Communist Party can survive for so many years, they solely depend on two important tools, violence and lies.
Violence and lies.
Lies, yeah. Lies, media is a very important tool to put the makeup on the Communist Party and to mislead people, to justify its crime, and it's basically the tool for the dictator to rule China with communist ideology.
I think in Nazi Germany they had an office of propaganda, and Goering was the head of it. I think he said, lie big. You do the big lie. You do a big lie, and if you make it big enough, people will come to accept it. Yeah,
yeah, that's what happened. Basically, if you have the same information, same line, brainwash people, days and months and years, and if that's the only information people are exposed to, you basically brainwash people, brainwash a mass of people.
And you call that propaganda? No, you call that being patriotic.
No.
No, but
it's to protect the ruling of a Communist Party.
Right. In the case of Germany, it was to protect the ruling of the Nazi Party.
Right, exactly.
Or in the Soviet Union, I think they had the same, to protect the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, who had seized control in the name of Marxism, which had happened in China.
Right.
Okay.
So my friend was very courageous.
In China?
In China, he organized more than a dozen reporters, and they are starting to write real news about China.
This is more than 5 years ago?
It's 5 years ago. It's for Epoch Time. That's how Epoch Time started.
In China?
Reporter and editor in China, and there's some editors in United States. It's based in United States, but we get inside story from China.
Did those reporters in China have to do that surreptitiously, or underground?
Yes.
Because they would have been...
one day, December 2000, only a few months after they started this, they were all arrested. So my friend Zhang Yuhui, he was sentenced for 10 years in jail.
Really?
Yes.
10 years in jail?
10 years. For writing news, for writing truthful news.
Truthful news?
Yes. Any news that Communist Party doesn't want to hear, that's a threat to them. They can arrest you, they can put you in jail however long they want to.
That's pretty staggering.
So my friend is sentenced for 10 years in jail. After spending 3 years in jail, he smuggled the letter out.
Yes.
So, and he told us some of his experience in jail. Right after he was arrested, he was interrogated for 7 days, 7 nights, non-stop. It's a way a Communist Party always used to break someone's will. And then later on, in order to change his idea, they put him on the cross.
Crucified?
Tied to a cross.
Tied to a cross.
Yeah, and then lock him in a small cell for a few months.
In solitary?
Yeah.
That can be absolutely awful.
Yeah.
And if I may, excuse me, because the charge was treason? What did they charge? Or do they need to? Or how bad is it? That's what I'm trying to get at.
The charge is trying to overthrow government.
Okay.
Yeah.
They didn't call him a terrorist.
No, they call trying to overthrow government. So anything that government doesn't want to hear, that's a threat. And they can name the threat as trying to overthrow government.
All right, now, if I may, overthrow government. We have here, this should make it, we're in the United States, okay?
Yeah.
So we have Democratic Party, we have Republican Party. The Democratic Party is trying to overthrow the Republican Party, and it's been like that all along, but they're not trying to overthrow the government. Now, there is no opposition in China, and so the government and the Communist Party, one party, is assumed to be the same in terms of the people who run China?
Yeah, there's no distinction between government and party, actually. The party runs the government, the party owns most of the land, the party control the army, party control the media, party control the legal system, court system, everything.
Outside of that, everybody has their own power. Outside of those few little items you brought up. I'm making a joke, right? They control everything. It's a centralized lockdown control of things in the name of... Is it, and the ideology that underpins that is Marxist-Leninism or Marxism?
Yeah. It's a communist ideology.
You were raised in a situation on a Marxist education, and you understand dialectical materialism as Mr. Marx saw it and so forth? And was that drummed into you in the school, when you went to school? Maybe you could share a little, because you've got first-hand experience.
Right. I was educated with communist textbook
with
in
what?
school. Communist textbook in school. When I was very little, I think 7 or 8 years old, we have to carry Mao's book.
Mao's little red book.
And the pin of Mao's portrait to school. Otherwise, we couldn't get into the gate of school.
Really?
Yeah. So there's a guard at the gate of every school to check.
That you had your badge?
Yeah. You have the Mao's
and your little red book.
And the red book, yeah.
And at the time, what was your attitude toward this decree that you had to wear and study the Green Book?
That's the environment I grew up.
Now, when you're in school, what age were you then? Would that be when you're 10 or 11?
7 or 8.
7 or 8.
Yeah. So basically, that's the way I grew up. So that's the only way I knew. Until I was in college, I started to read books outside communist ideology and start to read translated literatures and many books from the West. Then I
were those books outlawed, or they were in the university
for many years
library?
It was.
Could you read
Upton
Sinclair and some of the literature of, you know?
For many years, all those books were banned. But after Cultural Revolution, we start to see new publication of those books.
I wonder if we can go back to when you were, I don't want to, maybe it's not fair, but for the people in China who went through the cultural, the things they went through, these were in many ways very horrendous. There was a great attack upon intellectualism and so forth, that kind of thing. Was there an acceptance of that by the Chinese people, and they would say they'd march and do that? Or were they accepting that the rationales for that were correct in terms of historical movement or something? Or was there always a grumbling among the people about the power of the Communist Party and the imposing upon such a rigid ideology as they were doing?
Well, there were always individuals who could think independently and who did not agree with either the ideology or the actual carry out of those kind of system, but they didn't end up well. They can be sent to labor camp, can be sent to jail. Basically, you couldn't go anywhere. You can't advance in profession unless you go along the way Communist Party laid down on you. So coming back to this media is very harmful to people if it's totally controlled by Communist Party, because it becomes a tool to Communist Party.
Right.
Its sole purpose is to protect its power.
Right.
So the media is used to put makeup to make Communist Party look good. The media is used to spread lies and to incite hatred among people. When Communist Party want to pick a group to persecute them, they will make up all the fabricated stories and try to justify the persecution. So it's really a tool to protect the power of Communist Party and also spread hatred, mislead people. It's very dangerous.
Yeah, okay.
So
I wonder if I could back up a little bit more. And you've got such a rich experience. I really appreciate it. And it's not you necessarily, but the people you grew up with and the
Right.
Chinese culture, you understand it well and everything like that. Because we had a longer sweep of history and so forth, and we had a period, well, I don't know. You go back, you got a civilization in China that goes back 5,000, 7,000 years. It's so rich and so forth. It's very rich and a rich tradition and so forth.
Mhm.
And then, but in the modern experience, I don't know, after Columbus or something, there was this thing that happened where there was colonization by Europeans of the whole world. You suffered in China under colonization. Other people did, in a way. You had opium wars inflicted upon you, this sort of thing. And then Karl Marx came along, and he said that there is a imperialism on the part of the world that's going to create empire in all of the world. And he said, working people of the world, unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. And his interpretation of dialectical materialism came to be relevant to the thinking of better than 50% of the world population for a very long time. And what they were fighting against was imperialism on the part of a capitalist world and so forth. And China made a revolution against the imperialists or the vested interests of the historical patterns that had not been just coming out of history and so forth. So where does it, and they would say, then people are going to be counter-revolutionary to the overthrow of the people who had been ruling, and they're going to try and overthrow the revolution. We have to guard against that. They call it the dictatorship or the proletariat. These are all things you probably were familiar with. Was that all part of the context of understanding? And where does China stand now in view of this imperialism that Marx took exception to and so much of the world did? And what are the feelings of people from China or in the Epoch Times about this idea of seeing imperialism as part of a pattern of the Western world establishing its control over all of the world, a force that is to be combated through dialectical materialism and Marxism?
Well,
or socialism?
yeah. Well, we can put aside those names.
Okay.
Names.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
If we look at the history of China,
Mhm.
we have 5,000 years of history. We had many dynasties. We
Absolutely.
had emperors.
Yeah.
People could live a happy life. Of course, there were always sufferings, and there were always wars and this and that. But China has always lived with a tradition that really can provide people live like a human being.
Mm-hmm.
But when Communist Party came into China, it's a total different ideology.
Destroyed the culture.
Destroy the culture,
Mm-hmm.
knock down all the temples,
Mm-hmm.
destroy all the traditional books,
Mm-hmm.
and basically the only thing left is communist textbook.
Dialectical materialism.
Is
Well,
only
became the culture and the religion.
right.
Almost, yeah.
If they say this communists can make a better life for most of the people, let's look at the result.
Uh-huh.
The result is communist ideology has not been successful in any country, especially in China. After Communist Party took power of China,
48?
80 million people have been killed.
Mm-hmm.
80 million.
Mm-hmm. There have been terrible natural disasters in China. The river overflowing, millions would die.
This is a
There's been-
peacetime.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But never in history had been any dictator, any emperor, any war kills this many people. 80 million people. That's more than the people killed in both wars
Mm-hmm.
of the whole world.
Mm-hmm. And this was done in the altar, as we say, of?
This is totally done under the communist ruling.
Mm-hmm.
Let me give a specific example.
Okay.
In
That's
1950,
staggering. Yeah.
in 1950, that's 1 year after the Communist Party took over China,
Mm-hmm.
they killed landlord. Anyone who owns land can be killed.
That's like what they did in the Soviet Union under collectivization.
They killed more than 2 million landlords in 1 year.
Because the landlords represented the old feudal way that had to be overthrown.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they said.
I can tell my family story and
Yes.
see what kind of a landlord people are. My grandma owned 1 acre of land.
All that land?
1 acre of land. My grandfather worked very far away, worked very hard, and sent money back to my grandma, and she bought 1 acre of land. And for that land, she was classified as landlord. And landlord, she was lucky not to be killed. She had to clean public stairways. She had to clean public bathrooms.
As penance for having owned land.
Yes. She had to confess sin in front of Mao Zedong's poster every day. Basically, people spit on you, look down on you, you are nobody.
Now, where was that coming from? That was if I may, you went through it, I don't know. The Communist Manifesto and that kind of, they came to recognize injustice in the world. And it's still, too many people are living in a very bad situation. And they said the major problem was the institution of private property and private ownership. So they were going to socialize everything. And so if you owned something privately, you were part of the bourgeois, or the group that was exploiting the people in mass. So they'd get rid of private property, so you were the enemy class if you had any private property ownership, or you had gotten a little bit higher standards than the masses.
If we look at it as a normal person in a normal human society, this is like a robber. You go to a house, you take the house, take the land, kill people, murder the people,
Because
and then
you
say, because you own something, and then say you deserve it.
Yeah, if you own, that's right. That's what happened. That happened in the Soviet Union.
That's a murder.
And they did away with private property, and then they had all the control. They did away with the private sector, the market.
Yeah, exactly.
Because everything is controlled by the nomenclatura, and they have total control, and you don't even have a public sector, private sector balancing out of things. It's all controlled by one group that controls power. They did the same thing in Nazi Germany. Then they did it in the Soviet Union, and they did it in China, right?
So after one batch after another, killing any group they pick, any group they want to kill.
The Germans got the Jews, right?
Nobody can say any word different from a Communist Party anymore. And in order to advance in Korea, in order to live not as a second grade, you have to go along. You have to be a party member. You have to go along with whatever party wants you to do.
Because they have all the power.
Yes.
They have all the power and they control everything.
So,
and that's the way it is.
So it's basically like put a whole nation in jail.
Right. And then what they're saying is the reason that they're doing that, if I may, help me out because I have a hard time understanding. The reason they're doing that is because in terms of the movement of history, that the imperialism by the capitalists who own the property, they have a property system, and in this case it'd be the United States, is the leading imperialist country imposing a system on the world, that they are going to fight that. Then you had a thing in Cuba, and you had revolutionary people saying, for the people, we are going to overthrow the imperialists who are the capitalists who own all the capital assets and so forth. And that was their rationale for making a revolution that appealed to a great number of people for a very long period of time because there was injustice all over the world.
Well, but the result is they never did anything for people. They killed people. So 80 million people they killed. 80 million is in peacetime. So it's never for people. They can pick any group of people, kill them, torture them, persecute them. It's never for people. It's an ideology, it's a system that's in war with human nature.
But they were saying, yes, if I may, they were going to say that that they were fighting against people who said human nature was of a different way. And like, for instance, they were going to fight imperialism. And then they were fighting, and then we had a war, the United States of America. Where is the model of the good in the world, is what I'm trying to say in a sense. And the United States is an interesting country, but we went and fought a war in Vietnam with overwhelming power, with napalm, and we were responsible for killing, well, it's not 80, but it was 4 million Southeast Asians on our side, fighting for our side, and they were fighting against that imperialistic expansion of the Western thing, and they had imposed their colonial control, and this is their argumentation, that it is the imperialists, and that would be, again, the Americans and the Western world, that is the enemy of the working people of the world, and they had that, that was their argumentation, that we, or the imperialist countries, were the enemy class of people who seized all their assets for themselves and did not allow the masses of the people to be free. Is that not right with their rationale?
Well, whatever it is, no society is perfect.
Okay.
No human being is perfect. You always find bad people and good people in any society.
Right.
But that kind of a system is in war with human nature, and the only way to maintain that system is violence and lie. So that's totally different from any other country.
Oh, in the case of Communist China.
Right,
yeah.
right.
And
right.
it continues.
Right,
And
right,
it continues
right.
to violate
right.
the human rights in a basic way that
right.
the world should know
right,
about.
Right.
And you, from your own experience and your
yeah.
colleagues, want to let the world know about that,
yeah.
and that's what the Epoch Times is about?
Yeah.
Okay.
So imagine someone on the street, say here in Manhattan, oh, I see something I don't like. Oh, I see something I like. I'm going to write about it. Just for the article he's writing, he can be sentenced for 10 years in jail. That's insane, right?
Yeah, right.
For 10 years in jail?
Right.
It can be interrogated 7 days, 7 nights, and put on the cross. I don't know all the horror going on there. But that's the little bit I knew.
Yeah, right. Okay,
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
And this critique of imperialism is gone. I mean, because so imperialism, we don't hear that anymore among the people of the world. Soviet Union has imploded.
That's the name Communist Party put on Western countries.
Right. Imperialism was the Western countries.
Right. So actually, Western countries believe in democracy, believe in an open, free country, right? But those words were actually words from communist ideology.
Right.
Yeah.
Those were words from communist ideology.
Whenever they do something, they always have something to justify it.
Yeah, right.
That doesn't mean that it's the right reason or it's the true reason.
And it might be actually against human nature, as you say, trying to do something against human nature. And so then that's what I'm trying to say. Okay, so this is part of the experience. This is the thing you grew up with. And you've got this terrible situation in China now. China is now not only fighting imperialism, it's becoming imperialistic. It's joining with the imperialistic forces. Everything made in everything you buy in the United States anymore is now, there's trade. China's opening up. The capitalists, the imperialists are there putting investment into China. There's an alliance between China, the communist China so-called, which was supposed to be anti-imperialistic. They've joined with the imperialists, and they've now got a one force, and China and the United States are the two main forces in the world.
I think
Do you understand? There's a confusion there in the minds of a lot of people.
I know. I know. A lot of people are confused by this surface phenomena.
Yeah.
China is opening, is a huge market. But I have to tell everyone, China is still under the ruling of Communist Party.
Yes.
And that nature will never change as long as Communist Party is still there. So last year, there are 57,000 protests in China.
In China?
57,000 protests.
57,000 protests of the Chinese Communist government?
For different things.
Can they do that without having police come and hit them on the head and put them in jail and so forth? Or
of course.
Is it beginning to open up?
No, what I'm trying to say
Yes.
is how much social problem were there.
Uh-huh. Mm.
People outside and even people inside China, they only know bits and pieces.
Yes.
They never know what's going on.
Really?
So, really.
Yeah.
So if a Westerner go to China, you can see some city like Beijing and Shanghai. That's almost like a window.
It's like booming.
Window.
We're told it's booming.
It's a window.
Yeah.
It's like you go to a place to do window shopping,
Yeah.
but you never
Right.
know
Like,
what's
yeah.
inside.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
You never
right.
know what's inside.
Right.
So 50,000 protests, that's like about 150 protests every day.
Mm-hmm.
What does that say?
We had Tiananmen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does that say?
Mm-hmm.
That means a lot of people are treated not in the right way. A lot of people lost jobs.
Uh-huh.
A lot of people live in poverty.
Mm-hmm.
It is true some people made the money.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, there are people. Well, didn't you have a Chinese leader who said it's great to be rich after being communist?
But
Who was it?
people
The guy
didn't
who
get
said
rich.
it's good to be rich. It's good to be Donald Trump or something.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
that kind
So let's come back to Epoch Times.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
what we are here
Yeah,
today.
right.
Yeah. So it's important to inform people with
Mhm.
accurate information.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even reporters from Western media
Yeah.
who live in Beijing,
Yeah.
they don't have the freedom to report whatever they want to
They
report.
can't. Those people could have 50,000 demonstrations. Do they break those demonstrations up? They did in Tiananmen. Are those demonstrations for democracy and human rights? And what are they? And what is the reaction of the government against those demonstrations? And the fact that there are demonstrations, does that show that maybe things are loosening up?
No,
No.
It doesn't
Okay.
show that they have more rights. It shows they have more problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And people outside cannot know what's going on there. It's actually a lot of people living in poverty, a lot of people lost jobs,
Yeah.
a lot of people live in great difficulties.
Well, what about
Okay, let's come back to Epoch Times.
Okay.
So that's why we feel it's very important to inform people about what's going on in China, to inform Chinese because they have always been exposed to propaganda,
Yeah.
not the
right.
real news.
Right.
Yeah, and further, since China has become the center stage of the world,
It is.
you know, people from the West, they all fight for a chance to go and invest in China.
Yeah, all the
huge
imperialists
market.
and bankers are investing there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's important to let people know what's going on in China because
And the violations of human rights and
well,
lack of democracy.
that's part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And that's what the Epoch Times is about. I mean, that's the thing. It got started about 5 years ago. Congratulations on that.
Yeah.
And you have a major publication that is growing by leaps and bounds in terms of circulation
Right.
and in many different languages.
Right, right.
And it has to do with exposing, as it were, the situation as you see, as it is seen in China. And congratulations on having got that done. And you're head of the New York City office here of that. And you brought in, if you're not mistaken, we have a little clip we're going to show, which shows just the growth of this because it started and it's now grown and it's being distributed all over the world. And it's got a major outlet here in New York that you're the director of communications for. So maybe you could talk about the dimensions of that, and then we want to show that clip. But you brought in some examples of it in terms of the various languages in which the newspaper is published now, right?
Yeah.
You want to maybe we could show some of those? Or
Yes,
how did
yes.
you got these arranged? Because it's in all the languages of the world, it seems.
Yeah, when we have a meeting, people from different
Here, let me hold these up for you, right?
This is a Spanish edition.
This is the Spanish edition.
First
Okay, let's just go through. There's so many, okay?
First published
There's
in
the-
Argentina.
Argentina. This is the
This is French.
the French edition
It's published in 4 countries that
in
speak
4 countries now that
speak
speak
in
French.
French.
This one
This
is in
German.
This is in Germany. It's published, right?
Yes.
And here's one that's published in some language I can't make any head nor tail of. Oh,
This
go like
way.
that. All right.
This is in Japanese.
This is Japanese,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay. And this looks like something I can make out.
This
this
is
is-
in New York,
This
English.
is the New York edition, and you will see it in a greater numbers of newsstands all around the city, and it's
Right.
growing by leaps and bounds, right?
Right,
And
right.
this is the one you are particularly responsible for?
Yes.
English edition, New York City.
Yes,
And
yes.
this is where it got started.
Yes.
A lot of the people involved in getting it started was here.
Right. English was first published last year, a year ago.
And let's go. While we're going through this, what is this now?
This is English in Australia.
This is the Australian edition of the Epoch Times,
Yes.
which is doing that. And then
Yeah.
here's another. It's just endless. It goes on.
This is from Canada.
This is the Canadian edition of the Epoch Times. And this is now something else I can't make out.
Korean.
This is the Korean edition of the Epoch Times. This
Yes.
is good. And this is the
Russian.
This is the Russian edition of the New York. This would be in Moscow and so forth.
Yes.
In Russia, or
Yeah.
the people there.
Yeah.
And then here,
Yeah.
where I can't, you got so many. Here is the...
This is
You
the
can't-
Chinese edition in Korea.
This is the Chinese edition in Korea.
Yeah.
Okay. And is it similar copy in all of these, or do you gear it toward
Yeah,
a particular market, or what?
We have local content.
right.
This
And
is
what
the
is it?
Chinese edition in New York.
This is the Chinese edition. A lot of people here in New York.
Yeah.
And this is the...
Japanese.
I can't believe all these.
Japanese.
Japanese in...
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to talk about
Okay,
this one.
This one.
This
Okay.
is Korean edition of a special series of publication from Epoch Time called 9 Commentaries on Communist Party.
I've read it in
Yeah.
English, not in Chinese.
Yeah,
I've read
it was first published last year in November, and very quickly it spread into more than 30 countries.
This is a broad-based critique of the Communist Party's control of China.
And it's
Right?
very popular in China right now.
These are smuggled into China?
Yeah, people can...
Is this one in Chinese?
Yes.
There's 2 languages? There's Mandarin and then something else, or am I wrong?
9 Commentary is translated into 20 languages.
20 languages, 20, some of these which I showed, as well as Chinese. And is this subversive language, is this subversive
This is
literature
Korean.
in China?
This is Korean.
This Korean. But if you have this thing in China, it would be seized or it's subversive?
Yes. Actually, there was an Australian dancer who went to China, and with his company, he carried a 9 Commentary as he was talking to his friend.
Yeah.
He was talking about this 9 Commentary, and right away, he was arrested and then kicked out of the country. So Communist Party is very much afraid of this series because
go ahead.
because it exposed the whole nature and history of Communist Party.
And do you get a reaction or word from the people in China aware of this, and that this is like a j'accuse kind of thing or something, and that there's a reaction by the Chinese people to the truth, recognizing the truth that it represents? Is that something you find out?
Actually, many Chinese, inspired by this commentary, started to withdraw from the party.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, actually, last weekend, we just had a parade in support of more than 5 million Chinese withdrew from Chinese Communist Party.
Wow. How many people are in the Chinese Communist Party? And that would be like withdrawing from the establishment.
Right. I guess it's about 60 million.
60 million. 5 million have resigned in letters of protest or something and so forth? So you've really got something going maybe, huh?
They put resignation notice on the street, on the wall, public notice board, or they can put it on the website. So
and are there actions taken against them if they do something public? They say do they say we denounce the Communist Party? And will they be arrested? Will they be put in jail like your friend or something?
Some are put in jail for that.
So they do it at high risk.
Yes.
In terms of exposing themselves, but there are more and more?
Right. So that's why, although we see more than 5 million with their names.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But in reality, probably 10 times more people want to resign, maybe in certain circumstances.
Yeah.
It's really very hard for them
But it's
to
very
do that.
risky. For one thing, it's very hard to do that.
So they are courageous people.
Also, yes, and also it would be hard. It'd be like resigning from the Council on Foreign Relations. Or some New York Times editorial board, or from some position of responsibility, which you can build your career. So it's a thing that's hard to do.
Right.
One of the problems, we don't have enough time, and we have a little clip, right? We have a clip about the Epoch Times, and let's make sure we get that in, okay? Because that gives the dimension of this major movement on the world planet, which has on the planet, which has huge implications. But we're talking with Dana Cheng, and she's the Director of Communication, New York office of this incredible phenomenon emerging in the world called the Epoch Times. We want to let people know we have a CD or a DVD that displays that. So let's set that up and run that now then, please, if you would. Thank you very much.
The Epoch Times newspaper was launched in the year 2000 as the first truly independent Chinese newspaper. Based in North America, the Epoch Times brought open, insightful reporting to the overseas Chinese population for the first time, and quickly expanded around the world, both in print and on the internet. By June 2005, the Epoch Times had grown into the most widely distributed Chinese newspaper in the world, and even offers a separate English edition. It's distributed in 28 countries and has a weekly circulation of 1.5 million. The Epoch Times is winning over the market because it remains independent and community-based, while keeping a global perspective. Current issues are covered with a critical eye. Human rights, freedom of belief, and freedom of speech are upheld as ideal values. And while other Chinese news organizations shy away from controversial issues, the Epoch Times is always there to bring the important news to the people. The Epoch Times also sees the benefit of spotlighting good news and uplifting stories, showing courage, faith, and the power of the human spirit. The Epoch Times offers a diverse range of columns and articles and seeks to preserve traditional Chinese culture and values, how to live a happy, healthy, and harmonious life in the modern age. Health and relationship advice are always presented in a helpful and informative way. People enjoy reading the Epoch Times because of the highly ethical and moral perspective of the reporters, writers, and editors. It makes people feel good. The Epoch Times is distributed through local outlets in the United States and the world. Epoch Times stands, racks, and boxes can be found in supermarkets, street corners, grocery stores, restaurants, bookstores, libraries, train and bus stations, local businesses, and in the offices of community organizations. As of June 2005, total global circulation is 1.5 million a week, with close to 500,000 in North America alone. Our distribution network covers not only metropolitan areas, but also medium-sized cities, small townships, and villages, which are often neglected by other Chinese media. The Epoch Times website receives over 1 million page views per day, making it the #1 professional Chinese news website outside of China. The goal of our circulation and distribution is, where there are Chinese, there is the Epoch Times. The Chinese community is one of the fastest growing communities in many countries. In the United States, the Chinese language is the third most spoken after English and Spanish. The percentages of Chinese Americans with advanced degrees, those who have professional jobs, and those with higher than average income are higher than that of non-Hispanic white and much higher than the average of the overall population. And most prefer reading in their native Chinese language. Due to their powerful reach internationally, nationally, and locally, the Epoch Times is able to reach the highly educated, affluent Chinese community through local, regional, and national campaigns.
Oh, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. And, you know, we got about 10 minutes left. We're going to do this. And I've got a thing here, a thing. It's the 5th anniversary. Let's show it. It's the 5th anniversary of the Epoch Times, which is this Jia Q's movement of publishing about the situation in China, and they're celebrating that just as we speak now, in this very time. Congratulations to you all on that.
Okay.
And just let's take a look at the middle. Here you've got some of the people who are signed on, including our Mayor Bloomberg, has said this is something to be encouraged. We've got Mitt Romney and so forth, and other people within the United States that are encouraging this movement of that's represented by the Epoch Times. That's very interesting stuff, a very interesting thing. And congratulations on having gotten this out in such a wide dimension, and it's growing very rapidly, and you're part of a major development and so forth. And that's all really very, very interesting. I congratulate you enormously. I guess you're having a celebration just after this program airs, or after we tape it, actually. It's just coming up this weekend, and congratulations to you. I wonder if I could retreat back a little bit to it. We had a fella here who wrote a book recently called, Francis Fukuyama wrote a book, and he said, it's the end of history. And this was with the implosion of the Soviet Union, that the forces of what the Soviet Union, communists, Mao's called the imperialists, had won. That the war is over. There's no more threat from what the Soviets and the Chinese had called the imperialists, the Western colonizing enemy. It's over, and they've won. We've won. The imperialists have won. The capitalists have won. And that's all over. It's just a matter of some tinkering and how to change it and everything, that sort of thing. Some people take exception to that, and some people take exception to, let's say, the attitude of the United States of America as establishing themselves as a major superpower in all the world. They've got forces, military, in 130 countries around the world. Mr. Bush has just invaded Iraq in order to try and fight this kind of thing. But this idea that the system is in place now, all we have to do is fine-tune it, and so forth. And the Chinese system has joined that, seemingly. So that opposition that had been there on the side of what would be called the leftists of the world or the progressives of the world that was fighting imperialism, that's over, and it's an imperialistic world. We're going to live in that. Or what is the model that follows if the communist model does not hold in China? What happened? Soviet Union imploded. They now have a gross domestic product equal to Costa Rica. They've fallen apart. They've imploded. Do you think if the Chinese communist control of that country goes the way of the Soviet Union, that the similar thing would happen that would happen to the Soviet Union? What guards against that? Isn't it important that the communist government that controls China does not allow happen to China what happened to the Soviet Union? Or can you address that question, or you do address that question? If the communist government doesn't work, what's going to take its place?
Well, I would say Chinese people have enough wisdom to rule their country. Chinese people have lived without the Communist Party for 5,000 years, and they know how to take care of their life.
Okay.
So I don't think it's something we need to worry.
Okay. We don't think we need to worry. They know how to take care of their life. So that idea of the end of history, that things are in place, and the system that's in place, and would it be represented by the United States? It's a good country. They got a lot going for it. Freedom of the press, a lot of things. And the model that the United States is trying to impose, if that's right, or inform the world with, is in place. And so ideologically, there's no more question. Some people think we still got half the population lives on less than $1 a day. These kind of, the differences between the haves and have-nots is still a major question. How is it going to be addressed? Is it going to be done in a capitalist model? Those large questions in terms of the ideological battles that have roiled the modern world so much.
I want to make 2 points here. One is Chinese people will live like a Chinese people.
Okay.
They will live a human life if Communist Party no longer rule China. And then, secondly, although communist community is shrinking, basically majority is falling apart. China is only major country that's still ruled by Communist Party. Still, as long as Communist Party is there, it's a danger. It's not only a danger to China and Chinese people, it's a danger to the rest of the world. Let's take an example. We see a lot of Western countries are investing into China.
Absolutely.
And
the imperialists.
The belief is, okay, if we engage China, we can change them.
Right, what about that?
Yeah. But the thing is, if you look at the result, China has changed the Western world, the modern Western world, changed China. Let me give an example.
Please.
If company like Yahoo or Google, they want to have business in China, they have to help Communist Party and the Chinese government to set blockage so that people inside China would not see those websites the Communist Party do not want them to see.
Yeah.
So this is totally against the principle of a Western world, right?
But the Western world principle is the good one that can rule for all the world. Al Jazeera thinks that we see only, the Arab world, the Muslim world thinks that we see only one side. They see another side. They see another world, the cultural diversity, and they say it's the same in the world. And we have the same problem that we have a few people who run everything in this world, in the Western world, and they think there's major changes needed, and that's what I was getting at. Maybe we need as much a change in this world as China needs in terms of the communist-run world, or not.
So this business relationship, this contract, or the market of China has become a tool to make Western countries keep silent about huge human rights violation, huge problem in China, anything that China doesn't want to hear.
The Chinese communists.
The communists.
Yeah.
As long as they don't want to hear, they can keep the rest of the world silent with all these business contracts.
Right. And anyway,
Yeah.
And under any, whatever you name it
Right.
or anything, the idea that 1,000 voices and things can be heard and freedom of the press and these kind of things are principles that have a universality to them. And it would be under whatever name. Each group has a plutocratic class that runs each country, that kind of thing. But the idea of there being freedom of expression and communication in an age of communication is really a basic principle that applies to all systems and all ways of seeing the human condition. Don't you think? Okay. And the Epoch Times is one system that's making one part of the world available to the rest of the world, and for that I thank you very much. It's really, that's on the cutting edge. We might need the same sort of thing to improve the situation as far as the United States in the minds of many people, but thank you. I'm sorry for just getting into a lot of things. It's a huge issue. Congratulations on your 5th anniversary. Your pleasure to have her perceptions, and we invite you. That is Dana Cheng, and she's the Director of Communications, New York office of the New Epoch Times, a major force of understanding the world that's existing in the world. Congratulations on your 5th anniversary to you and everyone there. We're in conversation. Invite you to tune in. We'll be coming back again tomorrow. That's it for this particular segment. Dana, thank you very much for coming in and putting up with my naive questions, but it's a big issue. And congratulations again.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll look forward to programming tomorrow. So it's a major point of departure as far as the Epoch Times. It's really moving fast, you know. I'm really happy.